Hello, my name is Levi Karstensen. I'm a junior in high school. I'm an original oratory and competitive speech, and this is my speech dedicated to Ron Paul since he was one of the main influences for me performing this speech. The American Dream. There's a reason why they call it a dream. The idea that you can happily raise a family, own a home, and possess the things you want is no longer true. The Federal Reserve has taken this dream away from you, your family, and your friends. Today, in a country with a diminishing middle class, increasing poverty level, and rising unemployment rates, it's apparent by taking one look at the big picture. I believe that the Federal Reserve must be abolished as soon as possible and replaced with the gold standard. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you're asking, what is the Federal Reserve? Basically, the Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. It's known as the Fed for short, and it also controls the printing of all U.S. currency. This means that when a bank needs money, they contact the Fed, and the Fed loans that bank money. But the Federal Reserve is not part of the government. It is a private bank of private stockholders. Do not let the federal part of the name fool you. Furthermore, it is unconstitutional. Before the Fed's time, only the U.S. Treasury, a government branch, could control the printing of America's money. But now, it's the job of ridiculously rich bankers who want nothing more than more money. How did it start? The idea of a central bank started back in the times of Thomas Jefferson. When the rich bankers were trying to create a central bank while he was president, this was his response. To preserve our independence, we must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt, and public debt is the greatest of the dangers to be feared. It is incumbent on every generation to pay its own debts as it goes. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their money, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that grow up around them will deprive the people of their property until their children wake up homeless on the very continent that their fathers conquered. And according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, there are 643,067 sheltered and unsheltered homeless persons nationwide who know this feeling all too well. And Thomas Jefferson isn't the only president that has been against the idea of a central bank. The rich bankers tried again with Old Hickory, or Andrew Jackson. After surviving an assassination attempt, Andrew Jackson finally defeated the Second Bank of the United States in 1836. When he was lying on his deathbed, he was asked what the greatest accomplishment of his life was. Old Hickory replied, "I killed the bank." Those were his last words. May I remind you that Old Hickory wasn't an idiot. He actually paid off all of our nation's debt on January 8th, 1835, the only time in our nation's history. But in 1913, Woodrow Wilson believed in the idea of a central bank. Records show that even before he became president, big bankers and rich men, or the 1%ers of their day, were backing him up and actually helping to pay for his campaign. They didn't care about his policies. All they cared about was what he promised to sign. That was the Federal Reserve Act, which, just like the name implies, started the Federal Reserve and made it legal for them to control the printing of money, and also instate the 16th Amendment, which started the IRS and made it legal for it to collect taxes. With the Fed, our dollar was growing weaker by the year, until finally, when Nixon was in office, we officially abandoned the gold standard. That's when our dollar is backed up by a certain amount of gold. The Fed now decides how much each dollar is worth based off of inflation-deflation. Do you see what this does? Our dollar doesn't have anything to back it up. Gold isn't backing up a single dollar in your pocket. It's worth nothing. You can trade with gold, not inflation and deflation. We need the gold standard. All of your hard-working hours to earn this worthless paper are wasted without anything backing it up. The benefit of a gold standard is that money is backed by a fixed asset. This provides a self-regulating and stabilizing effect on the economy. The government can only print as much money as this country has in gold. This discourages government budget deficits and debt, which can't exceed the supply of gold. Furthermore, more productive nations are directly rewarded. As they export more goods, they can accumulate more gold, which can then be used for investing in and increasing in these profitable businesses. But without anything to back up our money, it's worth nothing. Imagine having nothing, and then a tax is put on it. That's what our government does today. Remember, the Fed loans banks money and charges the government interest. That being said, our government must pay back these debts to the Fed through the only way to get money quick: taxes. Your taxes do not go to your government. It is one of the biggest lies that our country has ever told, and one of the greatest thefts in human history. Understand that the IRS and the Fed's inflation work together. They don't just tax gain, they tax their own inflation. But on a brighter note, Woodrow Wilson eventually saw the error of his decision, but by that time, he was no longer president. His quote on what he did: "I have unwittingly ruined my country. Even the man who made this law regrets this. Why shouldn't you?" JFK once said, "For those we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence." JFK was the last president to stand up to the Fed. On June 4th, 1963, President Kennedy signed Executive Order 11110. This executive order empowered the U.S. Treasury to issue real money without the Fed. It would have worked. It had something to back it up. Even though this money was backed by silver, it still had something to back it up, unlike today. President Kennedy's plan to destroy the Federal Reserve machine would have worked. But 6 months later, John F. Kennedy went to Dallas, and he never returned. The new president, Lyndon Johnson, threw out Kennedy's order almost immediately. And since JFK, no president has dared stand up to the secret powers of the Federal Reserve. Those powers start to control bigger and bigger banks. They print more and more money. They are accountable to no one, and they decimate our nation's wealth to the benefit of a few. You might ask, well, wouldn't that hurt the people behind this too? If they control the nation's wealth, and the nation's wealth is decreased, wouldn't that hurt them financially? No. The people behind the Fed's secret powers are too big to fall. One such family is the family of Rothschild. It is a family of mega rich bankers in Europe. Robert Galen Ross, an ex-high-level agent for the United States, investigated them and put their net worth at $300 trillion. That is enough to pay back the US debt roughly 20 times over. So maybe now you're wondering, what can I do? Who should I support in Washington who is against the Federal Reserve? The only people in Washington right now who are against the Fed are Ron Paul and his son Rand Paul. They are the only ones looking at the evidence. The other politicians don't seem to care about the Fed's secrets. But now you do. Now you can inform your family, your friends, your neighbors. It starts with you. This whole ordeal with the Fed can end with your voice. Stand up and stand out. You can have a voice. You can help bring back the American dream.